My boss promoted his lazy mistress over me, so I let HR hear the call he begged me to delete. The applause hit me before the words fully landed, sharp and sudden, like a door slammed shut. Mr. Collins smiled and announced the promotion I had worked 3 years to earn. Then he said her name, clear and proud, and the room erupted like justice had been done. She stood up slowly, smoothing her skirt, pretending surprise she did not feel. I stayed seated, hands folded, heart pounding so hard it hurt my ears. I had trained her, covered for her, fixed mistakes she never admitted. Everyone clapped while my future was handed away in front of me. Mr. Collins talked about fresh energy and new vision, never once meeting my eyes. I felt old in that moment, not from age, but from being used. If betrayal has a sound, it is people cheering while your work is stolen. If you want to know how this ends, hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. After the meeting, Mr. Collins asked me to stay behind. He closed the blinds like we were sharing a secret instead of a wound. "You deserved it more, Anna," he said quietly, almost kindly. I waited for the apology that never came. "She needs this," he added, lowering his voice, "to keep things quiet." My stomach dropped as understanding locked into place. This was not a mistake or oversight. It was a payment. He talked about discretion, about how HR could never know about their trip. He said patience would be rewarded later, as if time erased humiliation. I realized then he was not sorry. He was careful. I walked out slowly, holding myself together with practiced dignity. I did not cry in the office. I saved my tears for the drive home, where no one could see me break. That night, my phone rang while I stood alone in my kitchen. Mr. Collins's name glowed on the screen like a warning. His voice sounded thin, nervous, nothing like the man from the meeting. "Please tell me you don't keep call recordings," he whispered. My chest tightened as he rushed through his fear. "There are files from that trip," he said. "HR can't find those." He begged me to delete anything I had, promising favors, protection, loyalty. I said nothing and let him talk until the truth spilled out on its own. When the call ended, my hands shook, but my mind felt clear. I opened my laptop and checked my backups carefully. Every call was there. Every message. I copied them onto a drive, then made 2 more copies. I labeled each one by date. That was the night I stopped trusting and started preparing. By Wednesday, the office felt heavy, like air before a storm. Conversations stopped when I walked by. People avoided my eyes, pretending not to notice what we all knew. She laughed too loudly near the printer, acting important, acting safe. Mr. Collins watched her like a man guarding a secret. I understood then that silence could humiliate just as deeply as words. They expected me to shrink, to quit, to disappear quietly. Instead, I observed. I saved emails, tracked meetings, noted changes in tone. Loneliness sharpened my focus instead of dulling it. I remembered praise I once ignored and promises now broken. Every whisper became information. Every glance became evidence. They thought I was alone. They were wrong. I was just quiet, and quiet people hear everything. Thursday night, I stayed late to finish a report no one else wanted. The office lights dimmed, and the building settled into silence. From down the hall, I heard laughter coming from Mr. Collins's office. Then the sound changed, softer, closer, unmistakable. I froze as a kiss echoed through the open door. My stomach twisted, but it was not jealousy. It was fury. I stepped back into the shadows, heart pounding, hands clenched. They were careless now, bold in their victory. That told me everything I needed to know. People who believe they have one stop watching their backs. I left quietly, my mind burning with resolve. On the drive home, something inside me hardened. I was done being patient for them. From that moment on, every step I took had purpose. The performance review came the next morning, too soon to be coincidence. Mr. Collins slid a paper across his desk and avoided my eyes. He said my focus had slipped and my attitude had changed. The words were clean, polite, and cruel. This was not feedback. It was a warning. I understood immediately what he was doing. He was building a reason to remove me before I could speak. I nodded and asked for a copy of the report. His hand paused for just a second. That pause told me everything. At my desk, I opened old folders and reread emails he had once sent praising my work. I saved each one carefully. Gaslighting only works when doubt takes root. I refused to doubt myself. That evening, I went home calm and clear. Fear had burned away. In its place was something steadier. Awareness. Mia was my college roommate before she became an HR manager. I hadn't planned to tell her, but the truth spilled out over coffee. She listened without interrupting, her face hardening with each detail. When I finished, she didn't offer comfort. She offered strategy. If you have proof, she said, don't say a word yet. Asked if I was imagining things. She shook her head slowly. They're setting you up, she said. But they're being sloppy. That word stayed with me. Sloppy people leave trails. She warned me HR moved slowly, but when it moved hard. Timing mattered more than anger. I walked back to my desk lighter than I had felt in weeks. I was not alone anymore. And I was no longer guessing. That weekend, I turned my dining table into a planning space. I gathered everything I had kept over the years. Emails, call logs, calendar invites, expense reports. I worked slowly, labeling each file by date and context. Nothing rushed. Nothing emotional. I bought a small black drive and copied everything twice. One copy went into a drawer. Another went into a box of old family photos no one ever touched. I sat back and looked at the table when I finished. It felt like control returning to my hands. Revenge was not loud or wild like people imagined. It was quiet, careful, and patient. They were still laughing somewhere, confident and careless. They did not know the truth was already waiting. And it was organized. She cornered me in the elevator Monday morning. Her smile was sharp, rehearsed. He told me about your obsession, she said softly. The word stung, but I didn't flinch. It's pathetic, she added. Her perfume burned my nose as she leaned closer. I looked at her and saw fear hiding behind confidence. I smiled. You should listen to our phone calls sometime, I said. The doors opened, but she didn't move. Color drained from her face. I stepped past her without another word. That moment mattered. Not because I threatened her, but because I reminded her I was not powerless. Paranoia is a slow poison. It eats trust first. I let it begin. That afternoon, I slipped an unmarked envelope under her desk. Inside were screenshots of messages she thought were private. His promises. His threats. Proof he planned to erase me. I didn't sign it or explain it. I wanted doubt to do the work for me. At the next staff meeting, she avoided my eyes completely. Mr. Collins cleared his throat too often and rushed through his notes. Something between them had cracked. No one else noticed. I did. I sat quietly, hands folded, heart steady. The pieces were moving exactly where I needed them. The storm was coming. And this time, I was ready to let it hit. HR emailed me Thursday afternoon, polite and careful. They asked me to come by for a short conversation. I knew before I sat down what it would be about. The woman across from me folded her hands and said a complaint had been filed. Against me. Harassment. The word felt absurd, almost insulting. The details were vague, heavy on feelings and light on facts. I recognized the shape of his work immediately. I asked for dates. I asked for examples. I asked for evidence. There wasn't much to give. I stayed calm and thanked her for telling me. When I left the room, my legs felt steady. They were trying to erase me before I could speak. That realization didn't scare me. It focused me. They had crossed from unfair into reckless. And reckless people always leave fingerprints. I found Mia in the stairwell later that day. She didn't waste time with small talk. They're building a case, she said quietly, to push you out before this turns. I nodded because I already felt it happening. She told me not to panic and not to rush. Fear made people careless, and careless people made mistakes. I asked her how long I had. She said days, maybe a week. That night, I went home and slept deeply. Not the sleep of escape, but the sleep of decision. They thought I was afraid. They thought my age made me slow. They forgot something important. I had lived long enough to know when silence was strength. This was not the hardest thing I had survived. It was just the most disrespectful. And disrespect always wakes me up. The next few days passed in a strange calm. HR interviews began quietly one by one. I watched coworkers struggle with what to say. Some avoided me completely. Others looked ashamed, but stayed silent. I answered every question simply and slowly. I did not defend myself. I did not explain. I let the gaps speak. Underestimation is a powerful advantage. At my desk, I kept working like nothing had changed. Inside, I counted time. Every hour that passed tightened the net. They believed I was broken. They believed I would fold. That belief made them sloppy. Justice does not need noise. It needs patience. And I had plenty of that left. He called me late that night. His voice was sharp, angry, and tired. "You're making this worse," he said. He told me to delete the recordings and promised to clear my name. I said nothing. He talked about loyalty, about everything I owed him. Then his tone shifted. Threats crept in quietly, wrapped in concern. I pressed record and let him keep talking. Money came up. Trips came up. Company funds slipped into the conversation like accidents. When he finally stopped, the silence felt heavy. I ended the call without responding. I labeled the file and backed it up twice. That call gave me exactly what I needed. The rope was in his hands. He just didn't realize it yet. By Monday, the office felt tense and crowded with rumors. HR was everywhere, asking questions, taking notes. I stayed small and quiet, letting them believe the story they expected. Mia passed my desk once and didn't look at me. That told me everything. The investigation had teeth now. I went home that evening and reviewed my files one last time. Nothing missing. Nothing rushed. I felt calm in a way that surprised me. The fear had burned off completely. What remained was certainty. They thought I was reacting. I wasn't. I was waiting. If you want to see how this turns, hit subscribe for more true revenge stories because the next move changes everything. She broke on a Tuesday morning, right when the office was settling into routine. Her voice rose in the hallway, sharp and unsteady, slicing through the hum of keyboards. She was crying, yelling his name, accusing him of ruining her life. People stood frozen at their desks, pretending not to stare. Security cameras blinked quietly above us all. I stayed seated and kept my eyes on my screen. I did not need to watch the damage happen. Her control had finally slipped, and when that happens, the truth leaks out. By lunch, everyone knew something was wrong. HR escorted her into a conference room, and she did not come back out. The office felt different after that. He avoided the hallways. His confidence was gone, replaced by a tight, hunted look. Fear had entered the building, and it was no longer mine. I felt steady, grounded. The storm was no longer forming. It had arrived. Mia called me that night, instead of texting. Her voice was low, controlled, but I heard the edge beneath it. "They restored the deleted emails," she said. I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair. She explained slowly, carefully. Company funds had been sent to her under fake consulting fees. Dates matched the trips. Amounts matched expense reports. There was no explaining it away. No creative wording that could save him now. I thanked her and hung up, sitting alone in the quiet of my house. I did not feel excitement. I felt relief. Truth has weight, and once it lands, it stays put. For weeks, I had carried everything alone. Now the burden was shared. They could no longer pretend this was personal or emotional. It was documented. It was real. By the end of the week, rumors filled every corner of the office. They moved faster than emails, faster than meetings. People whispered about audits and lawyers, about headquarters getting involved. Mr. Collins grew pale, his suits hanging looser each day. He stopped calling meetings. He stopped making eye contact. Power was draining out of him, minute by minute. I walked the halls unnoticed, invisible in a different way now. Not ignored, but untouchable. No one knew what I held. only that something had shifted. Fear has a smell, and it lingered everywhere. I kept working, kept my routine, kept my silence. Revenge does not rush. It lets pressure do the work. And pressure was building beautifully. I did not push. I simply waited for gravity to finish the job. He cornered me in the parking garage after work. His voice shook, even as he tried to sound threatening. "You don't know who you're dealing with," he said. The words felt borrowed, rehearsed. I looked at him and felt nothing. Not anger, not fear, just clarity. "You'll find out soon," I replied calmly. That was all. I walked past him, my heels echoing in the concrete space. He did not follow. Bullies only roar when they believe they are still winning. This one knew the ground was slipping. That night, I slept without dreams. The kind of rest that comes when an ending is certain. Whatever he planned next would not save him. The truth was already moving, and it did not need my help anymore. Late that night, I sent myself the full recording of his call. I listened to it once more, slowly. His voice was clear, nervous, and unmistakable. He talked about deleting files, about money he could not explain, about favors that were never supposed to be heard. I saved the file in 3 places and locked my phone. That call had started as a plea. Now it was a weapon. I sat in the dark and felt something settle inside me. Not victory. Readiness. Tomorrow would bring confrontation. Meetings. Decisions. Consequences. I did not feel small anymore. I felt prepared. That one call, the one he begged me to erase, was about to return to him. And this time, it would speak for me. The company party arrived at the worst possible time, dressed up as celebration. Banners hung from the ceiling, and cheap music played while people pretended nothing was wrong. Mr. Collins stood at the front of the room, glass raised, talking about leadership and integrity. The words felt dirty, like he was borrowing them from better people. I clapped louder than anyone, steady and deliberate. I wanted him to see me. His eyes flicked toward mine, then away again. Sweat darkened the collar of his shirt. She stood near the bar, stiff and silent, her confidence long gone. I moved through the room slowly, greeting coworkers who finally met my eyes again. Something had shifted. People sensed it, even if they did not understand it yet. As I left, Mr. Collins called my name, but I did not stop. The trap was already set. All that remained was timing, and timing, finally, was on my side. Early the next morning, Mia leaned against my desk as if she belonged there. She did not smile. "Today," she whispered, "HR wants your full statement." I nodded once. That night, I reviewed everything for the last time. Every file was labeled. Every recording backed up. Every email restored. There were no gaps, no rushed decisions. I felt calm in a way that surprised me. This was not anger anymore. It was completion. I chose my clothes carefully the next morning, neutral and professional. No armor. No disguise. Just myself. When I looked in the mirror, I saw lines on my face I had earned. They told a story of endurance, not weakness. By the time I walked into the building, I was ready. Whatever happened next, I would not flinch. The truth was heavier than fear, and I was carrying it calmly. The HR meeting room felt colder than usual, even with the lights on. Mr. Collins sat beside me, relaxed, almost confident. He believed he still controlled the story. The director asked questions slowly, carefully, about timelines, about expenses, about promotions. Then she turned to me. "Anna," she said, "do you have any proof of misconduct?" I took a breath and met her eyes. "I do," I replied. "But I want everyone to hear it." The room went completely still. Mr. Collins turned toward me, his face tightening. For the first time, I saw real fear there. I placed my phone on the table between us. My hands were steady. "This recording explains everything," I said quietly. Years of silence ended in that moment. I was done protecting people who never protected me. I was done shrinking. The truth was ready to speak. I pressed play, and his voice filled the room. Soft. Familiar. Careless. "Delete the files, baby," he said. "HR can't find out we used company money." No one moved. The director stopped writing. Mr. Collins went pale, the color draining from his face. The recording continued, spilling promises, threats, and quiet admissions. Every word landed heavier than the last. When it ended, the silence felt crushing. I did not look at him. I did not need to. That call, the one he begged me to erase, had just erased him instead. The director cleared her throat and thanked me for my honesty. She said the meeting was suspended pending investigation. I stood up slowly, legs steady beneath me. As I walked out, I felt lighter than I had in years. If you want to see how justice finishes its work, hit subscribe for more true revenge stories, because this was only the opening strike. She collapsed first. The moment HR stood, she bolted from the room, sobbing, hands shaking, shouting that she had been lied to. Her chair scraped loudly as she ran. The director ordered an immediate internal investigation. Lawyers were mentioned. Audits were scheduled. I sat very still, letting the moment settle. This was the beginning of the reckoning. Not loud revenge. Not shouting or insults. Just consequences unfolding exactly as they should. They had tried to erase me quietly. Now the truth was doing the same to them. Mr. Collins stared at the table, unable to look at anyone. His power was gone, stripped away in minutes. I gathered my things and left the room without another word. In the hallway, my hands finally shook, but only once. The revenge had officially begun, and I did not need to chase it. It was already moving. The legal team arrived the next morning like a quiet storm. No raised voices. No drama. Just sharp suits and careful questions. They came from headquarters, not our local office, which told me everything. This was bigger than damage control now. Mia called me that evening and spoke in a whisper, even though no one was around. They're not just firing him, she said. They're auditing every dollar. I sat at my kitchen table and let that sink in. Audits don't stop at one name. They dig. They trace. They expose patterns people thought were invisible. For the first time, I allowed myself a small smile. This wasn't revenge fueled by anger anymore. This was justice built on paper trails and signatures. The kind that lasts. I slept deeply that night, knowing the machine had started moving. And once it did, it would not stop for anyone. By Wednesday, security walked Mr. Collins out of the building. No announcement. No explanation. Just a quiet escort past desks he once ruled. People pretended to work, but everyone watched. I stayed seated, hands folded, heart steady. He didn't look at me as he passed. I don't think he could. The next morning, her desk was empty. Her name disappeared from the directory before lunch. Whispers filled the office, soft but constant. No one asked me questions. They didn't need to. The truth had spread without my help. That afternoon, someone brought donuts to the break room. No reason given. No celebration announced. But the mood was lighter, freer. It felt like air returning after being held too long. I realized then that silence could heal too, when it followed truth. A company-wide email went out that Friday afternoon. It was brief and carefully worded. An internal ethics violation has been discovered. Effective immediately, interim management will take over. His name wasn't mentioned. Neither was hers. But everyone knew. The email closed with a line about integrity and accountability. For once, the words felt earned. I watched people reread it at their desks, then look around with new eyes. Trust had been damaged, but not destroyed. There was relief in knowing the rot had been cut away. That evening, I packed my bag slowly and shut down my computer. I walked out of the building feeling taller than I had in years. Not because I won, but because I survived without losing myself. Justice had done what it was supposed to do. It restored balance. He called me that night from a private number. I almost didn't answer. Almost. You ruined me, he whispered, his voice thin and broken. I made you, he added, like it was a spell that might still work. I stood in my living room, phone warm in my hand. You didn't make me, I said calmly. You just forgot who I already was. There was silence on the other end. Then a sharp breath. You'll regret this, he said weakly. No, I replied. You will. I ended the call and blocked the number. That chapter of my life closed in that moment. No anger. No satisfaction. Just finality. Some endings don't need noise. They just need truth and the courage to say it once. HR called me in the following Monday. They offered me the position I had earned months ago. Director of Operations. The title felt solid when they said it. Real. I listened carefully, then made one condition clear. I wanted the same pay grade he had. No negotiation. They agreed without hesitation. That told me how deep the damage had gone. When I signed the paperwork, my hands didn't shake. I wasn't proving anything anymore. I was claiming what was already mine. As I walked back to my desk, people smiled openly for the first time. Not out of pity, out of respect. I sat down, opened my email, and began planning the future. The past no longer owned me. And the best part was knowing I hadn't cheated, lied, or begged to get here. The media leak came faster than I expected. Someone shared the investigation summary online, and by lunchtime it was everywhere. Headlines talked about misuse of company funds and promotions manipulated through personal relationships. No names at first, but the comments filled them in quickly. People love a scandal when it confirms what they already suspected. Co-workers sent me links with short messages like, "Did you see this?" I didn't reply. I read quietly, letting the truth travel without my help. The article mentioned ethics violations, internal audits, and leadership failure. It felt strange seeing my pain reduced to bullet points. Still, I didn't regret it. Exposure was part of accountability. By evening, his name appeared in an update. So did hers. I closed my laptop and sat in silence. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was consequence playing out in public. And for once, the story wasn't being rewritten to erase me. She tried to save herself next. I heard through Mia that she planned to sue him, claiming coercion. She said she had been pressured, manipulated, and promised protection. The story almost worked until messages surfaced. Messages where she demanded things. Messages where she bragged. Messages where she laughed. They destroyed each other with the same lies they once shared. Watching it unfold felt surreal. Two people who believed they were smarter than everyone else tearing themselves apart. I stayed out of it completely. No statements. No interviews. No satisfaction speeches. Silence was still my strongest position. In the end, her case collapsed under its own weight. He lost everything anyway. They didn't need me to finish them. They were perfectly capable of doing that on their own. I simply stepped aside and let gravity work. Walking into his old office for the first time felt strange. The space was larger than mine had ever been, but emptier somehow. I opened a drawer and found a framed photo of him smiling at a company retreat. I stared at it for a long moment. This was the man who thought I was disposable. I fed the photo into the shred bin and listened to it disappear. Then I sat down and opened my laptop. Work waited. Real work. My team stopped by one, checking in, offering support. No pity in their voices. Just respect. That mattered more than applause ever could. For the first time in months, I felt grounded. Not triumphant. Grounded. Power felt different now. It wasn't about control. It was about clarity and choice. And I finally had both. My team took me out for drinks that Friday night. Nothing fancy. Just a small place with loud music and cheap wine. They raised glasses and joked about surviving the weirdest month ever. Someone toasted me as the woman who taught leadership a lesson. I laughed, really laughed for the first time in a long while. The sound surprised me. It felt free. I didn't talk about revenge. I talked about plans. About changes I wanted to make. About doing things better than before. That mattered more than rehashing pain. When I went home that night, my phone buzzed once. An unknown number. I ignored it. Some voices don't deserve answers anymore. Sleep came easily. Not because everything was perfect, but because it was honest. And honesty is restful. He called again weeks later. This time, his voice was slurred and desperate. "Please," he said, "help me get my job back." I closed my eyes and felt nothing. No anger. No pity. Just distance. You should have thought of that before pressing record, I replied. He started to cry. I ended the call. Some conversations only reopen wounds. The company rolled out new ethics policies soon after. Anonymous reporting systems, digital audit trails, training sessions that suddenly mattered. Everyone knew why, even if no one said it out loud. I watched the changes take shape and felt proud. Not because I won, but because something better replaced what was broken. I hadn't just survived. I had helped stop it from happening again. That felt like real power. The company reforms rolled out quietly, but thoroughly. New ethics policies appeared in our inboxes, detailed and firm. Anonymous reporting systems. Clear rules about power, money, and relationships. Mandatory training sessions that no one laughed through anymore. People paid attention this time. Everyone knew why these changes existed, even if the reason was never named. I helped review the policies, adding notes from years of experience. It felt good to turn pain into protection for others. I walked the halls differently now, not careful, not guarded. Just present. Trust takes time to rebuild, but honesty lays the foundation. Some coworkers thanked me quietly. Others just nodded with respect. That was enough. I didn't need public credit. The system had changed, and that mattered more. Revenge fades. Impact lasts. And this impact would outlive the scandal itself. A month later, an email arrived from an executive at headquarters. She wrote that my composure during the investigation had not gone unnoticed. They wanted to know if I would consider a transfer to HQ. A bigger role. More influence. I sat with the email for a long time before responding. Part of me wanted to stay where everything had happened, to prove I belonged. Another part understood growth meant movement. I replied honestly, asking questions instead of rushing. That was something I had learned through all this. I no longer jumped to please anyone. Whatever I chose next would be my decision fully. Not fear-driven. Not ego-driven. Just right for me. For the first time in years, the future felt open instead of heavy. That was its own kind of victory. I saw him months later in a grocery store aisle. He looked smaller somehow, thinner, older than I remembered. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes tired. He noticed me at the same time. For a brief moment, we just stared at each other. I felt nothing rise in my chest. No anger. No satisfaction. No need to speak. I turned my cart and walked away without a word. That silence felt final. Not cruel. Complete. He no longer had any place in my story. The past only has power if we keep carrying it. I left the store smiling softly, not because he was broken, but because I was free. True revenge isn't watching someone fall. It's realizing they no longer matter at all. At the next annual company meeting, I was asked to speak. I kept it short. I talked about trust, about responsibility, about what leadership really meant. I said integrity wasn't proven by words, but by what survived when lies collapsed. The room was quiet when I finished. Then people stood and clapped. I didn't look for any one person in the crowd. I didn't need to. This wasn't about recognition. It was about closing a chapter with truth instead of bitterness. Afterward, colleagues shook my hand, thanking me for setting a standard. That mattered. Walking off the stage, I felt steady and whole. I had not lost myself to anger or revenge. I had used truth as my weapon and dignity as my shield. That was the kind of ending I wanted. That one call, the one he begged me to delete, changed everything. It ended his career, his reputation, and his comfort. It restored my voice, my future, and my peace. I never deleted it. I printed the transcript and framed it in my home office. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder of what silence costs and what truth gives back. When I sit at my desk now, I look at it and remember the woman I almost became. Small. Erased. Quiet. Then I remember the woman I chose to be instead. Prepared. Patient. Unbreakable. I don't replay the past anymore. I don't need to. The lesson is already written. If someone asks how I survived, I tell them this. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I pressed record. If this story stayed with you, like the video, subscribe for more powerful revenge stories, and tell me in the comments what part hit you the hardest.